Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Greco. I'm your host for Lead with Love. That's LOVE, learn, offer, value, educate. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about people that have made impact on other people. And in some cases, have had such a great impact that they saved the world. And for the next two, for the next two episodes, what I want to cover are individuals that took individual responsibility and countered an order that would have basically blown the world apart. The first one we're going to cover is going to be happen in 1962, and the next one that's going to happen we're going to talk about is 1983. So I think the reason I want to bring this up is that people, and this is my opinion, just my opinion, but it's media driven. Media loves to put a semblance of panic in people's lives. They talk about all this good news and different aspects and different things that go about that. But I truly believe, and this is kind of me getting on my soapbox at this point, that the media will bring out the worst, absolute worst in people, and they try to counter it with bringing out the best in people. But even that is not as as impactful as they're talking about things in a doom and gloom situation. And I'll tell you why they do that. And again, this is my opinion. The media does this because they want to then report on that gloom and doom. That's what they want to do. They want to continue to report on gloom and doom and start it out and then report on it. And one of that is nuclear disaster. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to be in a nuclear war with with the Russians. And my contention is this: is that there are people in the U.S. side and the Russian side that are reasonable individuals. They will not launch nuclear weapons without provocation. They just won't, folks. I mean, I was in the military for 20 plus years. I was in civilian intelligence. I did contracting with civilian intelligence. I'm telling you that there are people out there that are reasonable individuals that are not going to just press a button just to press a button, just out of some type of revenge or some type of emotional breakdown. This is a situation where you need to know that there are people out there, and these next two sessions are going to talk about that. And if I can do even more, if I could find some more, I'm going to do even more. So this we're going to talk about today is going to be the man who saved the world. So let's start out. The man's name, for the purpose of this presentation, is Basil. So Basil was born in a small town near the capital of his country. He was born into a peasant family. He decided at the age of 16 to join the Navy, even participating in World War II, serving aboard his country's ship as kind of a merchant marine. He then joined the country's navy, the actual navy, and served aboard submarines after World War II, and served in major fleets. Now, people like this don't just get there. I mean, they get there by good, solid decision making, calm demeanor. Those types of things help individuals get rank. I'm telling you that from personal experience. It's it's a calm demeanor. It's the ability to make a decision and stick by that decision. He was second in command of a nuclear submarine, and when the nuclear submarine had a malfunction, and this malfunction wasn't just any malfunction; it was a reactor malfunction. Because of that, they the captain of that submarine uh, said that they had to figure out another way to cool that reactor. Now, Basil, second in command, uh, the the crewmen were not willing to basically expend their lives in a high radiation environment to try to cool down this reactor. Basil volunteered to go in with the crew members and help them develop an alternate way of cooling down this reactor. Now, think about this for a second. You are a young man, and basically you are giving away your life to help your crew members develop an alternate way of cooling a reactor to save the submarine. Now, this is an amazing story when you come down to it. You know, a lot of people think that the military is something like, okay, you send people in to die. But this individual was willing to go in with them, even though he did not have the experience or expertise of those crew members. He was willing to put his life on the line to go in there and to do what needed to be done to save the submarine. And it was saved. And there's a movie about it. I'll talk about that later. So as a result of him doing that, he developed cancer later on in life that would kill him later on. So that's a little bit about this individual's background. Now, just take a look at the learn, offer, value, educate. Right? What did the individual learn? Learn that crew members' morale is based on what the leaders do. What the leaders do, right? He offered himself as basically a sacrifice with the crewmen to be able to fix this thing. He valued every one of those crewmen, and he valued the fact that he had to get the submarine and the rest of the crewmen, to safety. And he was educated himself in the situation as to what he needed to do to be able to help those people. So what does he do to save the world? Well, Bessel later becomes a commander of not just one submarine, but a flotilla, basically of 4 submarines, of which he's the commander of one. The submarines would be involved in a Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Now, this is the October that almost changed the world type of aspect. While involved in that mission, the submarine flotilla was discovered by enemy vessels, and depth charges were launched by the enemy vessels to signal the subs to surface for identification. That's the reason the enemy vessels were throwing depth charges into the water. They were low grade depth charges just to signal. Now you have to remember, this is the 1960s, before cell phones and different types of communications, those types of areas. So all of a sudden you have this situation where you're getting depth charged by an enemy vessel. One of the sub commanders, thinking that the depth charges was a signal for war, decided to launch. It was time to launch nuclear weapons, nuclear tipped torpedoes, for the purpose of this situation. Bessel, being the flotilla commander, did not concur, since the depth charges were not destructive and more of a signal than a weapon. And he understood this. He learned it through experience, through the ability to sit back and say, there's something about this situation that needs further analysis. Now, think about this. You're in the middle of basically a crisis with an enemy country. You are being depth charged by enemy vessels, and you're sitting back trying to think this out logically. Did this individual have emotional intelligence? You betcha they did. And I think that the idea behind this whole incident is that no matter what we do, no matter how we do it, it has to do with emotional intelligence. What do we do? So that's pretty important, and I think that needs to be focused. Now, now we have Bessel. He's the flotilla commander. The sub commander contacts him because he had to, and says, "Hey, I'm going to launch these nuclear weapons." The flotilla commander takes a look at this and says, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to launch nuclear weapons. We're not going to do this based on that. He orders the sub commander to surface and await orders from the Navy headquarters. Now, what happens from there? Interesting. The result. Because of his action, Bessel averted a nuclear war. I mean, a lot of people sit back and they go, Chris, that might be hyperbole. Ladies and gentlemen, if they would have launched nuclear tipped torpedoes at the enemy vessels, that would have caused a nuclear blast in an area of basically open ocean in the Caribbean Sea, that area. That would have caused an immense amount of fallout. It would have been a nuclear disaster. And at that point, because because they fired an enemy vessel, the enemy country would have then fired back. It would have been retrieval. It would have been a mess. It would not have been. It would not have been good. He averted a nuclear war, and we were so close at that point. I mean, it was absolutely amazing how close we were at that point to having a nuclear war. And this man had the capability to be calm under extremely stressful situation and think clearly through it to be able to avert this. The entire crew, because of their surfacing and subsequent actions, were disdained and disrespected by the Navy headquarters. Now think about that for a second. The individual, they signaled them to surface with depth charges. They surfaced. They signaled. They did whatever needed to be done. They were basically disrespected. They were almost like surrendering, that type of thing. In 2002, one of the crew of the submarines disclosed the mission to the press, and Basil and the submarine crew that surfaced were declared heroes. So it took that long, 40 years, for finally justice to be served for Basil. Basil, in the meantime, was promoted to Rear Admiral, 2 stars, and became the head of Naval Academy. He ended up a Vice Admiral, 3 stars, in the Navy, and was head of the Naval Academy until he retired. Basil was hailed as preventing a nuclear war between 2 countries. He was even nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. This man was a hero, an absolute positive hero, not because of something that he did that would have cost lives, but something that he did that saved lives. And this man impacted the entire world by his ability, again, to remain calm, put forth his emotional intelligence, and sit back and analyze the situation to figure out exactly what it was that he needed to do to be able to make something right. And who was this man? Who was he? His name was Vasily Arkhipov. He was a Soviet naval officer. His actions prevented the nuclear war between the USSR and the US during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was married to Olga Arkhipova, who later hailed him in a documentary as intelligent, polite, and very calm. He died in 1998 as a result of the radiation exposure during his time on the K-19. That was the sub that had the nuclear reactor overheat and had to be cooled down by alternative methods. There is a movie out called K-19, The Widowmaker, and that portrays Vasily Arkhipov, although that they don't use him as the name, they don't use his name, but Liam Neeson actually portrays him in that movie. So Vasily Arkhipov, a man who learned about leadership and then offered his expertise to value all of his men, educating them in the process of how to preserve peace, even as a soldier of war. Ladies and gentlemen, this one man, because of his one decision, saved the Holocaust that would have completely obliterated the world in the 1960s. And he was not an American. I think that's very, very important. This was a Soviet naval officer. A lot of people think that the Russian and Ukraine war is going to lead to nuclear disaster. I am telling you, there are Russians right now that do not want nuclear war that are sitting in high positions. They are, unless the United States launches missiles at Russia, we have no fear that they are going to launch at us in a preemptive strike. I'm telling you, we have too many people that are good, solid, emotionally stable people that will prevent that from happening, even possibly at the cost of their own lives. This man was one of them. This is a picture of Vasily Arkhipov. It is, share. You can share this picture. It is common source. It's from National Geographic. You can see young man. He's a young man. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, he. This is someone that is, interestingly enough, there's an organization over in England that talks about preserving life that has a room named after him. And that's how I got to know who he was. And here are the references, the different references where I received this information. I think as part of the data show that I am also on, and others, it's very important to be able to cite those. So this is the citations. This is where I got it, most of the information. And I strongly urge individuals to go out there and find out about Vasily Arkhipov. He is someone who is he was just a good man, and it was very evident that he very much enjoyed being able to help people, even at the cost of his own life. So this is a short episode of Lead with Love, but I think it gives exactly what's necessary from the standpoint of being able to point out who this man was and why he was important. And next time we'll talk about another man, same virtual situation, and how he also saved the world. So until then, always learn, offer, value, and educate. I think it's important to focus on that, and I think it's really important to understand what exactly it was, what exactly they had to do. So if anybody wants to read the book, my book, it's Lead from Love, and it is available at lulu.com. You can contact me at www.grechtech.com. I'll be more than happy to send you a copy. So you can get the book at lulu.com, and you take a look at the different aspects of what we talk about. We talk about learn, offer, value, and educate. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your attention today. By the way, have a happy new year. Take care. Always, stay healthy, and make sure that you lead with love, right? Lead with love. Lead with learn, offer, value, and educate. Thanks. Have a great day.